Welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to make a bit of a different video that I don't normally make. I just kind of wanted to talk about TBC and what I think is likely going to be much different this time around, considering everything that's happened so far on Anniversary. We're about halfway through Anniversary, I would say at this point. A couple months from now, we'll be heading into AQ40 and doing the AQ40 opening event. And then shortly after, we'll be going into Naxxramas and then walk through the Dark Portal. So the first question I have is, TBC Era Servers, are they going to happen? Blizzard has yet to really address this and say that we are going to have a TBC Era server coming with the new Anniversary realm as we progress into the Burning Crusade. I would imagine we're going to be able to copy our characters if we want to and take those characters to the Era cluster. But what's going to happen? Are we going to be able to keep these characters on Era in the final patch during Sunwell? I really hope so. I mean, Blizzard would be missing out on an easy opportunity to get a lot of players back into the game. Same thing goes for Wrath. If we progress back into Wrath of the Lich King, there's a ton of players that would resubscribe to the game just to play ICC again. And I know without a doubt there is. The other thing that kind of goes with adding an Era server is, will GDKPs be unbanned? Because as it stands right now, you can go on Era and do a GDKP right now. I know I'm going to get some comments about this one, but I think GDKPs have made Era stay everlasting. There's almost always a gold bid run going on. There's almost always a SR going on. There's always something going on Era. And the same thing goes for Kata. If they removed GDKPs in Kata, I don't think the population would look the same that it does right now. And I'm going to kind of segue into the next point is like, what's going to happen this time around in TBC for difficulty, right? Are we going to get pre-nerf fights? Is KT and Vash going to be pre-nerf again? Or are we going to get the post-nerfed versions of those fights? We've seen how much trouble players had the first time around when we played TBC a couple of years ago. I can't remember the exact number, but I would have to say it was like 3 to 4 weeks. Players were just hard stuck on KT or Vash, whatever one, or both. I would imagine we just get post-nerf values. I don't see the reason to have to go through pre-nerf Vash and KT again, as it was pretty awful. And this is coming from someone who has week 1 cleared the entirety of TBC. Up until KJ, we just didn't get any practice on the PTR. Just not the same level of difficulty as Classic, without a doubt. Is it the most challenging content in the world? Absolutely not. But is your average player going to struggle through the raids? 100%. Another thing regarding difficulty, I just don't understand the demand that there is on Reddit and the forums. It seems like it's a vocal minority of players. Like, I would have to imagine 10% of the player base, they really want to do these harder raids, but 90% of the player base is just never full clearing it. We've seen this in Season of Discovery. We're seeing this right now in the newest raid, the Scarlet Enclave. And we could look back at Wrath of the Lich King. Only around 20% of the player base full cleared ICC, even with the damage modifier. Without the damage buff, I think that it was like 0.6% or 1% of the player base did a 0% heroic Lich King. And yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me, as it just separates the player base. The other thing I want to add on is, are we going to get a fresh TBC server? I really don't think so. I mean, if players really want a fresh server, sure, let them have it. I just don't see the demand for that, because we were kind of already given the clarity that we're going to be going into TBC now, and a lot of players have probably already prepped their characters for that. I get that playing on a fresh server can be fun and very intriguing, but we kind of already had that experience with Wrath of the Lich King, and we've seen how that went within a couple of months. As I remember, I think it was the 4th or 5th month, the server pretty much collapsed, and Blizzard gave players the option to free transfer to one of the more popular servers that was still alive and kicking. So yeah, I just don't really see the point of having a fresh server. If players really want it, give them the option. Again, this is a great opportunity for Blizzard to be able to pull this kind of information, and this would just give them a much better idea on the demand for a fresh server. And that's kind of where the next point comes in is, are GDKPs going to be still banned going into TBC? I feel like it's the necessary evil that has to be added back into the game. As much as players hate it, as much as players love the system, I think that it has to be added back into the game. It's just inevitable. Are they going to lift the ban and allow players to run GDKPs again? Are we going to have a GDKP server to where players that want to participate in GDKPs still have the option to? The problem with that, obviously, is, and I know that players are going to disagree with me here, the GDKP server is going to be way more popular than the non-GDKP server. And that's just obvious. All the good players, all the average and above average players are going to migrate to that server. And then any of the players who want to do their soft res runs or stay in that sort of environment, which by the way is completely awful at the moment. I don't know how anyone is doing SR runs. I have many of my friends and guildies telling me just how bad the pug scene right now is. It's just the most toxic, selfish group of players you ever will play with. As soon as the SR doesn't drop for them, you're going to have someone leave your raid. And I'm sure it doesn't happen every time, but the fact that it's just so flawed and you don't have the incentive to stay throughout the whole entire raid, it's just not good. Because what happens is, as soon as that player leaves, you're not filling that spot. You're clearing the whole raid with 39 people. No one wants to join an already cleared raid. They typically want to join a full clear run so they can get as much loot as possible. I mean, it's a no-brainer. And this is kind of the thing that I think it goes next with is, if we added a poll system into the game, I think that it would definitely be very 50-50 on the GDKP issue. How many people want it? How many people don't want it? It would definitely not be a majority rules thing. I think it would be at least 51%. If I had to guess, it's probably like 60% of the player base wants GDKPs and the other 40% despises it. Blizzard would have to take a similar approach the way old school RuneScape does their polls and just do 70% of the poll has to be in favor of it in order to pass. If they just did a majority rules thing, there would be some really bad polls that would pass, like dual spec. Say dual spec failed with like a 51% rate. 51% said no, and the other percent said yes. You know, it would fail, and then people would be so upset because dual spec's ultimately a really good thing for the game. It does have its downsides, but for the most part, it's just a complete win for most players. And probably the biggest thing with the polls is it gives Blizzard a clear direction on where to take the game. You could look at the forums, or you could look at Reddit and get an idea on what players are voicing, but it's never a true representation on what the community actually wants. I think a lot of the issues in Season of Discovery could have been completely avoided if they just set up some sort of polling system. I think SOD would have been a lot more successful because of that, giving the players some sort of power to say, hey, we don't want this into the game. It's not passing. It's not making it into the game. That's awesome. I get to play the game the way that it still is, and it's not going to have this additional change that I think is bad. I think something that would rub players the wrong way is the difficulties in SOD. I think the poll would have been very 50-50 and it would have never made it into the game. Add more loot to bosses, that would have probably passed for 70%. Add incursions into the game, I think that would have failed. I don't think that would have passed either. Maybe they can go add that to SOD in the future. That's the place to test it out, to see if the poll system would work in a classic WoW environment. And I wish they would have done it sooner, because now we're at the final phase, if you will, of Season of Discovery. Ultimately, there's not really a reason to add a poll system into the game if they're not going to actively add updates to the game. And yeah, I think they need to add a poll system, honestly. If they add a poll system and GDKPs don't pass, so be it. At least it gets polled and players actually get to voice their opinion rather than this constant back and forth on Reddit and Twitter and all these other things. And even in YouTube, I've seen a lot of creators starting to talk about, are GDKPs going to come back? Are they going to be the necessary evil that has to be added back into TBC for it to be successful? Because if you look at Cataclysm, it's been very successful. Yeah, it's not the most popular version of Classic, but they've had a very consistent player base throughout the entirety of the game. And going into these harder raids in TBC, the pugs and your average guild is just not going to be able to clear the content. And I'm just saying that out of experience with a lot of my friends not being able to complete the raid, their guild falling apart, and then going on to doing GDKPs because the raid's a little bit more organized. There's more incentive to focus up and actually play the game correctly. You're actually there to show up and play the game and just blast through the raid. I know that there's this ongoing debate of GDKPs promote gold buying and all of this stuff, but I just don't understand how you can be so dense that GDKPs are the problem. Look at the economy right now on Classic Era and look at the economy on Classic Anniversary. The excessiveness and how expensive consumables are on a server that's a fresh environment versus a server that has tons of gold just sitting on it, it doesn't make any sense. And one of them has GDKPs added and one of them doesn't. It's just so obvious. It's the same thing in SOD right now. So many players are just buying gold because there's no GDKPs. Yeah, there's a lot more SR runs, but you have to keep in mind too with SOD, there's also increased loot, whereas Anniversary, there's no increased loot. So it's totally different. You go into an SR run, you got 40 people and only 2 items are dropping off of a boss, whereas SOD, you have a reduced raid size and you have more items dropping. It's just a win-win situation for the SOD players because now suddenly you don't have to really worry about bringing any gold or any requirements. You just show up to the raid and pretty much get handed loot. Whereas Classic, you know, you have to kind of work for that item. You have to kind of get to the point of having the right gear to get into that raid or having some sort of logs or some sort of metric to measure your skill. But yeah, ultimately, I think TBC is going to be a lot less popular this time around, especially if GDKPs just don't get added. But yeah, with the raids getting more difficult and like AQ, especially in Axe, your average SR run is just not going to make it through Naxxramas, dude. I just never see it happening. My guild back in 2019, It took us 3 weeks before we got to KT and SAF. And even then, it took us the 4th and final week to go back in there and finally full clear it. And then at that point, a lot of people quit the raid. A lot of people did not have it in them anymore to continue progging through that and saying, yeah, it took us 4 weeks to full clear the raid and all the consumes and all of the gold spent to get to that point. And now, hey, the raid's on farm. Now we can clear all of it again. You still got to go get consumes. You still got to go farm gold. And then it's just this never-ending cycle. And that's why I think GDKPs are kind of that solution. You make money from doing the raid. Yes, people buy gold. People are doing that now. People are buying gold to get consumes off the auction house. Consumes wouldn't be so expensive if that wasn't the case. Consumes would actually be a little bit less because now suddenly GDKPs are back and the wealth is redistributed. I wouldn't doubt it if we've seen GDKPs come back during Naxxramas. If not, you're going to see exactly what you're seeing here. Look at this drop off right here to right here. That's what's going to happen again. But yeah. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos just like this one. And as always, I will see you in the next one.